Hello, farm goers. Welcome back to the Cryptid Farmyard. Today, Cicada will be reading I'm Taking Care of a Local Farm for a Few Weeks. They Left Me a Strange Set of Rules. Part 1 and 2 by BlairDaniels. Take us away, Cicada.
A few miles north of me, there's a little family-owned farm. The family takes a vacation in July, though, and they posted a job listing for a caretaker. My job would include feeding the animals, making sure the irrigation is working, and harvesting some crops. It's a small operation, so it's not fields and fields of stuff. Plus, they were offering $2,000 at the time. That seemed like an amazing deal. Now, I'm not so sure. See, the Grecians left me detailed instructions in an envelope along with half of the stipend, and as I sat down to read it, I realized that it sounded a little strange. Dear Emily, thank you for taking care of our farm. To ensure your safety and happiness, and the animals, we've included a list of instructions and tasks. Number 1. Please feed the goats and chickens at 6 a.m. sharp. They get pretty cranky if it's not on time. 2. You will need to prune off the flora canes in the raspberry patch. To do this, cut the canes, branches, that are woody and have already fruited. Wear thick gloves because there are thorns. If you do get cut, immediately head inside and call Dr. Livesey to make sure your wound is not infected. 3. The sunflower field is easy to maintain and brings beauty to our farm. However, if you see a sunflower that isn't facing the same direction as the others, immediately head inside. Do not return to the sunflower field until the following day. Number 4. The farm is, as you know, surrounded by forest. Sometimes we get coyotes, foxes, or other wild animals prowling around the grounds at night. Don't worry, the animal pens are completely secure and there's no need to check on the animals if you hear anything at night. In fact, we recommend you do not leave the farmhouse between sunset and sunrise. Number 5. Do not enter the corn maze. Even if you hear noises coming from the maze that sound like a child crying, do not enter. The corn maze is not open to visitors yet. It's most likely bobcats in the woods. Number 6. Do not be alarmed if you see the goats awake in the middle of the night. They are semi-nocturnal and often wake up to roam, graze, or use the bathroom. Number 7. You may help yourself to any of the fruits or vegetables you harvest. However, do not eat the apples from the northwest corner of the orchard. Number 8. We no longer use scarecrows. If you see one, please return to the house, lock all the doors, and close all the curtains. Stay inside until the following morning. Number 9. Make sure to always stock the farm stand twice a day. In the morning and again in the afternoon. At night, take all the unsold produce inside and store it in the refrigerator. Number 10. We do not own any pigs. Thank you very much, Emily. The Gershons. I glanced out the window. The sun was hanging low over the trees, orange rays filtering through the forest. Damn it, if I'm not supposed to be out after dark because of the wolves or whatever, I better get cracking. I walked over to the goats first. They huddled close to me as I filled their food bins, staring at me with their weird slit pupils. I tried to get it done as quickly as possible. Goats, honestly, freaked me out a little bit. As I hurried away, one of them, with black and white fur, pushed its little face through the fence. "Meh," it bleated, staring at me. The chickens were more skeptical of me, staring at me and letting out long barks as they bobbed their heads. As soon as they realized I had food, though, they came over and pecked the ground. They were pretty cute, actually. I locked the gate and turned back towards the house. I froze. Across the field from me stood the field of sunflowers, bright golden petals and dark centers, swaying slightly in the wind, but while all of them tilted away from me, facing the dying sun, one of them, near the edge of the field, was instead facing me. I stared at its pitch-black center. Didn't the note say something about that? Go inside if one of the sunflowers is pointing a different way? I locked up the chicken gate, then I strode across the grass towards the old farmhouse, still carrying the bag of chicken feed. I was halfway to the house when I turned around again. I wish I hadn't. The sunflower was still facing me, even though, based on my path, it shouldn't have been. I picked up my pace towards the house. Oh, come on. What do you think is going to happen? That sunflower is going to chase after you and murder you? My brain knew it was stupid, but there was something instinctual, a gut feeling, that forced my legs to pump harder. I didn't even bother dropping the feed off at the shed. I raced into the house and locked all the doors. Phew, safe. I took a final glance out at the sunflower. Then I went into the tiny kitchen and started some water boiling for pasta. By the time I was sitting down to eat, I was shaking my head. So stupid, afraid of a sunflower. Something woke me up in the middle of the night. I sat up, my neck aching from the crappy pillow they'd left for me. I looked around my tiny bedroom, but nothing seemed amiss. Well, of course there were things amiss, like the peeling paint and the light bulb that flickered in the clogged toilet, but nothing different. I yawned and checked my phone. 3:12 a.m. Sighing, I settled back into sleep. But before I drifted off, I heard it. A small, high-pitched noise coming from outside. I slowly forced myself out of bed and walked over to the window. Underneath me, the farm sprawled out into darkness, but it was distorted in the old glass, shapes and colors bleeding into each other like running paint. I flipped the window lock and pushed it open, the wood squeaking loudly in my ears. I listened. Silence. Then, "Help me." A voice, a child's voice, coming from the direction of the cornfield. That's no fucking bobcat. My blood ran cold. I stared out into the darkness at the cornfield on the edge of the woods, hoping that it was just some lingering dream or something. But as I stood there, the cool summer breeze wafting into the room, I heard it again. "Please, help me." The voice wavered as if the child was crying. I squinted into the darkness, staring at the cornfield. I have to get out there. I remembered the Gershon's rule, but there was no way this was an animal. "Hey, I'm coming, don't worry," I shouted out the window. Silence. And then a rustling sound. I squinted at the cornfield, and I could see the stalks moving as something moved within them. "Stay where you are," I shouted into the darkness. "I'm coming to get you." The corn stalks continued to move, and every muscle in my body froze. The amount of corn moving, there was no way it was just a small child in there. The corn was swaying, dancing, roiling in an area maybe 10 feet across, and it was making its way towards the edge of the field, rapidly. I shut the window and I closed the blinds, my heart hammering in my chest. I raced downstairs and checked the locks, and then, finally, when I was sure I was safe, I called the police. But they wouldn't even come out. "There are no missing children in the area, and what you saw was most likely a bear," they explained calmly. I think they must know all about the Gershon's farm. So now I lie here, in my bed, listening to the snaps and rustles of the corn stalks. There's a chair wedged under my doorknob. I've triple-checked all the locks, and all I can do is wait for dawn. 6 a.m. came all too early. The alarm blared in my ears, and I forced myself out of bed, groaning. The sun had just crested over the hill, and the sky was lit with the pale gray of dawn. I could hear the rooster crowing already. I looked out the window, scanned the farm, but everything looked normal. All the sunflowers were facing halfway towards me in the direction of the rising sun. The cornfield was still. The chickens were milling about the coop, pecking the ground. I went downstairs, grabbed the bag of feed I'd never put away, and went out to the coop. The chickens were probably the only part of the farm I liked. The fat little hens ran towards me as I poured the food onto the ground, making happy noises. They pecked at it. I locked the gate and started over the hill, towards the shed to get the goat feed. That's when I heard it. Oink. I stopped in my tracks. The Gershon's note said they didn't own any pigs. Oink. The note didn't say anything about avoiding the pigs, though, so I was free to go fetch the goat feed, right? I started walking again, up the hill. Oink. That's when I realized something was off about that sound. It almost sounded human, like a person saying oink instead of an actual animal sound. For a second, I had a weird mental image of a naked man covered in his own filth, crouching on the ground, saying oink over and over. Oink. I shook my head and continued up the hill, and when I got to the top, I saw the source of the noise. A fat, pink pig, standing in the grass. I let out a breath of relief. See? It's just an ordinary pig. I passed the pig, ignoring it completely, and opened the shed. Put the chicken feed back, pulled out the goat feed, started back up the hill. I stopped dead as my eyes fell on the pig. Its face. It looked human. Its fleshy, pink snout was shorter than it should be. Its curled little ears sat low and flat on its head, and its eyes. They weren't round and beady, but almond-shaped like a person's, with dark pupils that stared at me up in a way that suggested intelligence. The feed bag fell out of my hands. I stumbled back, but the pig didn't advance. It just stared at me with its human eyes. I backed away, keeping my eyes on it, slowly walking around it so that I was going back towards the house. When I got over the hill, and that horrible little face was finally out of my sight, I whipped around and broke into a run. What the fuck was that? I panted to myself as I locked the front door behind me. Not knowing what else to do, I pulled out my phone and called the police. But when they picked up, I wasn't sure what to say. I started, found a pig that doesn't look like a pig on the farm, the Gershon's farm. Did you touch the pig? The officer cut in. What? Did you have any contact with the pig? Any at all? No? Good. We'll send an officer out to deal with it. 15 minutes later, I saw a police car pull up to the driveway. They asked me where I'd seen it, then told me to stay inside. I went over to the window and watched them walk up the hill, then disappear. A minute passed, then a shrill squeal erupted into the silence. 5 minutes later, the officers reappeared, carrying a large black plastic bag that swung with each step. Hey, I called out as they headed for the cruiser. What was that thing? The officers glanced at each other. Rabies, the female officer said, while the male stuffed the bag into his back seat. A bunch of rabid pigs have been showing up in the area. Gonna send it off to get tested. Good thing you didn't touch it. Before I could ask her more questions, she hopped into the driver's side, and then they were gone. I stared out the window, utterly perplexed. Why didn't the Gershons tell me to stay away from the pigs? After the debacle with the pig, I decided to take it easy. I made a wholesome breakfast, read a few chapters of the thriller I was working through, and called my boyfriend. Around 11 a.m., I realized I'd forgotten to stock the farm stand. It was still technically morning, so I ran out into the field, filled my hod with zucchini and tomatoes, and then ran up the driveway as fast as I could without spilling any of the produce. But as the little farm stand came into view, I saw there was already someone waiting. I checked my watch. 11:49 a.m. I'm so sorry, I breathed as I spread the produce out on the wooden table. I was supposed to get this out earlier, but there was a pig, and something made me stop rambling. I glanced up to see that the person standing there was a little odd. He was an old man, probably about 6 feet tall and very thin. He wore, surprisingly, a crisp black suit and an old-timey bowler hat in the sweltering heat. He was smiling at me, but his teeth were deeply yellow and crooked, and his eyes were sunken in the back of his skull. Nothing unnatural about him, just a slightly creepy-looking old guy. But in a way, he reminded me of the creepy dudes from that one Buffy the Vampire episode, where they take away everyone's voices. So what are you looking for today? I asked, when he didn't move to take any of the produce. The Gershons aren't here? I shook my head. Won't be back for 2 weeks. He said thoughtfully. They didn't tell me they were leaving. Oh, you know them? He let out a small chuckle. You could say that. I waited for him to either take produce or leave, but he didn't do either. He just stood there, looking at me. The way his blue eyes cut into mine made a chill run down my spine. It wasn't predatory or sexual. It felt more like he was examining me, studying me, trying to read every tilt of my head and blink of my eyes. It made me extremely uncomfortable. So, are you interested in any of this? The tomatoes looked really good today, I said, trying not to sound nervous. Or if you're looking for something else, I can go pick it up for you. Only the Gershons can provide what I am looking for. Okay, well, I'm, gonna go back up to the farm. If you change your mind, the prices are listed on the whiteboard, and you can just leave the money in the box. I shot him a fake smile, turned around, and headed up the hill as quickly as I could without seeming weird. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. Emily. I never told him my name. The smartest thing would have been for me to run, but instead, I turned around. He wasn't chasing me. He was still standing at the farm stand, 10 yards from me. I wouldn't trust the Gershons if I were you, he called out. Then he turned on his heel and strode away. As I watched him go, I realized there weren't any cars parked at the bottom of the driveway. He just turned onto the old country road and walked away. I watched him until he rounded the bend and disappeared from sight. I retreated into the house, checked all the locks, and decided I would spend the rest of the day inside, at least until it was time to feed the animals and stock the farm stand again. For more information on the author and other stories like this, click the link below. If you want to hear our thoughts on the story, check out the banter episode on your screen now. Time to round up the livestock and bar the barn doors for the night. Good night, and if you hear scratching outside, ignore it.